road between thriving and starving artists is where I'm at. I really like your work. I can't eat lights. I need new heights. Just want to make a living doing the work I love. Throw the notion of a starving artist out of the window. Take the elevator down to the ground floor and jump on it some more.
Hello, welcome to Fork in the Road again. Today, it's a person I get to speak to, someone who I've been wanting to speak to for quite some time, James Lee from Jams to Blues. We first met virtually several years ago now in the NFT space, and I'd be really interested to talk with James about NFTs and also like your backstory, James. When did you first get into being a creative artist? I know you're across lots of fields of art, but where did you start to express yourself like that?
Well, it's a long story. It's kind of been a lifelong thing. You know, I kind of used art when I was younger to overcome some severe childhood neglect and abuse, and it's been what I use to be able to cope with trauma and overcome a lot of things that no child should ever have to go through, honestly. You know, it went from that to I met people when I was very young that were good mentors and knew the situation I was in was bad and there's nothing that anyone could do about it at the time. And there's this guy, he had to have been 15, 16, I was probably 11 or 12, and he showed me how to improvise with art. Which grew the grassroots of my surrealism automatism. My biggest influence in art today is Salvador Dali, my favorite artist, who, along with Andre Breton in the 1920s, coined surrealism, which is using your subconscious to kind of just create without any guise or guide or notion whatsoever. You just put your pen to the page and you freestyle, and you just let it come from the soul, and it draws itself. It's like you're daydreaming. You daydream and you let the daydream take over, and you're just you're basically channeling whatever that is into your images. I didn't really have a lot of direction for a long time with my art with that until I went to my first art school and learned chiaroscuro and impressionism and how to copy what the old masters were doing. And so I learned how to paint like Dali. I learned how to draw and create really, hyper realistic things with graphite. And I learned about the 7 divisions of light. And that, of course, that brought my skill to a completely different level. I'm 37 now. I just turned 37 5 days ago. And
happy birthday!
Thank you. It's a never-ending learning process for me. I don't feel like I'm ever really going to reach a precipice with art, because it's a journey for every individual person that's an artist, and it's different for everyone. But for me, I'm very, very connected to, how to make sense of feelings and the world and psychology using art, which is why a lot of my art's very optical now. But I just keep going. I can't stop. I made a vow.
Yeah,
I made a vow. Sorry. Go for it. What were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I think the art in itself. I mean, like, I find it interesting how you say it kind of art would help you get through bad times, because also you get in that flow state. I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's like your sense of purpose. You're just in that zone. It's almost like a form of meditation in a way. So for me, it's like a form of meditation, and also helps with mental health and purpose. I find that really, if I don't create, if I go through a period of time when I'm not creating, I've become pretty miserable.
Right.
So I think that's a really important connection that you brought up about how helpful art can be,
right.
to kind of get through things like that.
No, I I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I'd have to say Salvador Dali would have to be one of my big influences as well. I recently started. I know Salvador Dali. You might know the name of the method, but he would lie in his bed with a tray next to a silver tray next to the bed and a spoon, and he would like lie there till he was just falling asleep, and he'd let go of the spoon, and the spoon would drop, and it would wake him up again.
Lucid dreaming,
And
right?
this method, yeah, he would get this lucid dream, well, not lucid dreaming, but he would get in a state where he could get a snapshot of the dream world. And that's when he would create. Just quickly, I've been dabbling in a thing where I've been waking up and I've been using AI. I've been writing AI prompts of my dreams to capture my dreams. And I think now I'm up to 76 or so dreams that I've captured, of completely just subconscious images. I think that's an endless well of creativity. Do you use dreams
That's
in
pretty
your
cool.
work at all?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I remember my dreams. I remember my dreams all the way up to almost the age of 5. And I have had some pretty wild dreams. I have a series of artworks that I've done. I used to keep a dream journal. That's one of the things that I used to do, just because you know how it doesn't matter how vivid a dream is, unless it's a night terror or something. A lot of the times, within the next 10 minutes after waking up, you completely forget what the dream was about. So I started keeping a dream journal so that I would remember my dreams. And it got to a point where um, I could really remember every dream, even without writing it down afterwards. And it started to become a narrative, and I started to have lucid dreams. And I have them.
Wow.
I have lucid dreams just about every night, where I am aware and awake and walking through dream world. And
Ma-
it's not like they say it is in the movies and how people claim, where you can just like have control and fly and do all these things and tell the dream what to do. I've never once in my life been able to control my lucid dreams. I'm always just along for the ride, and I'm aware I'm dreaming, but there's not a thing I can do to control what happens in the dream. And when I wake up, a lot of the times when I'm lucid in these dreams, they're very scary. They're very nightmarish, which is why a lot of my older art has a lot of really crazy looking monsters and alien looking things in it with a lot of gore. But uh,
Yeah.
my dreams change as life changes and time goes on, and I've healed from these traumas. My dreams get better too. So does my art, changes in that direction as well.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder because for me with dreaming, um, I often will remember a dream if it's really scary and it actually, it scared the, what out of me. And I kind of feel that, we forget the nice parts of our dreams because, as creatures that have got this, urge to survive, our memory tends to only hold on to the things which might help me in a life or death situation at a later stage. So I'm wondering, I'm using it as an experiment to see because I was amazed looking at all my dreams, just going, there's a lot of scary and dark stuff here. There's not a lot of like I was asking my girls, this is fascinating. I'm asking my girls about their dreams.
Right.
And it's storybooks, it's unicorns, it's fields and bunnies and stuff like that. Just go, how do I get to that? Like
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a journey we're all
um,
trying to get to.
yeah, get back to unicorns and bunnies. With your art, you've got so you're not just a visual artist. You are also a musician, and I'm wondering how. I mean, maybe you find other creative outlets as well, but how do you find the balance of all that works, and does one complement the other?
Oh,
How do you
definitely.
find that works?
I am a synesthete. I'm not sure if you're not familiar with what that is, but synesthesia affects about 1 in every 2,000 people. Um, Sound, for me, any sound, it doesn't have to be music. It can be the clacking of teeth, the clicking or rubbing of sounds, any sound, whatever. It generates a visual in my brain that is very powerful that I can experience. And I didn't learn until within the last 3 years what these visuals were. through studying geometry and learning about the maths behind fractals and really complex patterns like tessellations, I started learning what I was actually experiencing when playing music and when just listening to someone talk. I have tinnitus too, so I have ringing in my ears. So even when it's quiet at night and I'm trying to sleep, I'm constantly seeing things. So that's what I'm experiencing. It's these really complex arrangements of evolving and morphing tessellation patterns made out of counterchanges. And a basic counterchange is a checkerboard, a black and white checkerboard or chessboard. With the white square, then the black square, then the white square, then the black square. But if you can imagine putting that in Photoshop and using the liquify tool to move the checkerboard in all these different patterns and directions so that it's still technically a checkerboard, but it's now morphed into really complex patterns. And now you can take that checkerboard and you can apply some quadratic equations to it to morph it mathematically to create some symmetries with geometry. And you get stuff like you get stuff like that in fractal art, basically, is what it is. So it's
now. Do you see that? Do you see that with your? Do you feel like you see it visually, or is it something that's going on in your head? Do you close your eyes and
it's not something that I hallucinate necessarily. It's almost like I have a different eyeball. I don't know how to explain it. It's like it doesn't get in the way. I mean, I can drive, I can read, I can do whatever. But it's like I have another eyeball that can see it all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And does that draw you to optical art?
Oh, I love.
Or does it just make
optical art? Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things I connected with you. We were doing NFTs, and I just love that style. Yeah. And it's interesting that that's you got first-hand experience.
Well, I really wanted to know what they were, and it started about 4 years ago. I decided to start drawing them for the first time. And the reason why I didn't for such a long time is because experiencing them gave me a lot of anxiety. Because I never really knew how to talk about it, and it's not very common, and it's not necessarily a mental health issue. But I thought it was my whole life. I was like, I'm just crazy. I just need to stop talking about this so people don't think I'm seeing stuff, And but I started learning about synesthesia, and I came across some YouTube videos of people that have it and experience it like I do. And there's a whole community of people out there that are synesthetes that can do things that nobody else can do with music and with art. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I wanted to try my hand at it. I decided to start drawing them. So I'll put on one of my favorite songs, and I'll draw what that song experience is to me visually. And a lot of the times it's a very complex optical pattern or illusion that comes out of it. And then of course through that experience I started learning what the names of these illusions are, because today psychology it's very hard to be original with optical art, but because everyone's thought of every possible thing you can do to create an optical illusion, and that wasn't my goal with it. My goal was just to cope with and overcome my anxiety of this synesthesia that I've had all these years. And it worked. My anxiety for it is gone. I don't panic or freak out when I see patterns in optical art, because quite the opposite happens when I'm looking at one of those patterns. And it can be on a TV show, it can be in a cartoon, or I'm just out shopping and I see any kind of really complex pattern work or tessellation work. I hear things. They go back and forth.
So wow, that's incredible.
So,
and I wonder, when you're looking at an optical illusion or some kind of fractal, based image, Can that work both ways in terms of like you seeing that as almost like sheet music? Can you look at an image and
I know, yeah,
play
yeah.
what it sounds
I
like?
play guitar to what I experience visually all the time, and it helps in songwriting. I know you're aware. February 20th of last year, 2024, on my 36th birthday, I played a Guinness World Record 25-hour and 15-minute long guitar solo without taking a break.
Yeah,
And it was
I was gonna get to that.
and I
Yeah.
mean, what helps with that kind of stuff is really just the synesthesia altogether. I feel like it's like
Yeah.
it's like having my own built-in generative AI software. I don't know
Yeah.
what the input is always going to be different because I'm always kind of overstimulated by all of my sensations all the time. So
Yeah.
the combination of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is always different, and it always
Yeah.
creates some kind of new thing in that extra eyeball that I've been telling you about, and
Yeah.
which also has hearing apparently.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know, I've learned over the last few years to mess around with it to see what I can do, and there are harmonies with it that work naturally in classical color theory and with geometrical and mathematical art in general. I'm able to draw them by hand. I don't use any kind of guides or anything. I can show you really quick. I mean, I'm doing this guitar for the Hands-On Science Center, which is a science museum near where I live. They offered me to paint this, and I painted this by hand.
Oh, nice.
So that's a counterchange tessellation fractal with 6 points of radial symmetry. And
so you can name it.
Yes, I didn't used to be able to.
Wow, that's cool.
So I didn't used to be able to do that, but I can now because I've been studying and kind of doing science on myself. You know, I want to know what it all means.
Right.
Just a quick intermission to say that the Fork in the Road podcast has a Patreon as well, where you get a whole bunch of special things. You get an extended hour-long advert-free things, like you get to ask the podcast guests questions. You get a blog where I deep dive things which, you know, might help make you successful and me successful, because I'm learning along the way too. You can also chat with me one-on-one and talk about your art business and make it work together. Back to the interview.
That's one thing I find amazing about your drawings. Like, my mind was completely blown when because I was, dabbling in some optical art, which is like I brought along my Hypnobat T-shirt, which has kind of got that. But I saw you, and you were doing it all by hand with like a ruler and that, and you're working it out perfectly and drawing it out on a piece of paper. Like, in the NFT world, there is a lot of AI art and generated art, and to see you doing it old school, I just like, my mind was blown away that you could do such a thing. Are you a mathematical? Would you consider yourself a bit of a mathematical genius, or is it just something that comes out of you?
Oh, I don't think I'm a mathematical genius. On top of everything else I've been through, and it can sound hard to believe, but I have Tourette syndrome on top of all of this, with severe OCD and ADHD, and in order to curb the urge and the compulsions behind the tics that I have, it really, really helps to have an outlet. And for me, it's always been art and music. But in 2019, unfortunately, I was a guinea pig for a resident studying in psychiatry at the Veterans Affairs Hospital here in the United States. And he gave me some medications to try and treat what he thought was severe depression at the time. And it put me into a state of acute psychosis for about a year. I experienced psychosis, and it was not fun. One of the worst experiences of my life at the same time, one of the best, because I'd never felt so great. But while in psychosis, coming out of it, I can't believe who I was when it was happening, you know? And of course, my hallucinations and everything off the charts during that time. And I ended up suing the state of Tennessee for medical malpractice, and I gathered enough evidence after getting better, of course, after almost a year and a half, 2 years of getting better. And I won. And they saw my case, and they awarded me 100% service-connected disability for life because of what they did to me. And I found out through getting second opinions other places that, you know, the left side of my brain had a lot of damage on it because of what happened. And so my ability to understand math it used to be pretty darn good. I mean, I worked as in the U.S. Air Force. I worked on the IBM S360 mainframe computer, which is the same mainframe computer that they use in the NASA Skylab space station. And you know, I have a history of computer science. I was a professor for a while at Daymar College, and I taught network support administration and engineering. And all of that after 2019, my ability to do those things just degraded by an immense scale. I had the hardest time doing even basic math. But my synesthesia kind of just took over and was like, I can still draw it. I don't even need a calculator you know, I can see them. I can just draw them because I'm tracing what I see in my head, essentially.
Yeah. And so is art a major part of your recovery process?
Oh, biggest part of my recovery process. You know, this piece you see over here on the wall, that piece is called Psychosis. It was the first piece of art that I made in psychosis at my absolute worst. It's a marker drawing that contains basically how I was experiencing the world, broken up into millions of broken mirrors, and seeing like thousands of screens and listening to hundreds of conversations in my head at the same time, and not knowing which one was my imagination and which one was actually real in front of me. So I made a piece of art to express that. But that's the thing is, you know, I came out of that, and I know it's one thing to go into an experience like that, but it's another. And I've read, you know, met quite a few other people. It's very rare to be able to come out of it. A lot of people are on medications, very strong medications, for the rest of their life after having an experience like that. I'm very lucky that I got a second opinion. I went to the Amen Clinic in Atlanta, Georgia, where their method of psychiatry is considered unconventional, not really widely accepted everywhere else. But I'll tell you the biggest difference between how the VA treated me and how they treated me, and you can come up with your own opinion. You know, I go to the VA. They make me fill out a questionnaire. Their algorithm sends me to a list of medications to try, from ones with least amount of side effects to the worst. I go to the Daniel Amen Clinic. They check my blood. They make sure that my vitamin levels are okay and that there's nothing strange going on with any of my like liver cells or anything like that, or vitamin D levels. And then they gave me a SPECT scan, which is something they've been doing since the 90s, that shows the activity in your brain, the blood flow in your brain. And they compare it to hundreds of thousands of other scans of other people's brains, and they can say, this is what a brain looks like that has bipolar disorder. This is what a brain looks like that has schizophrenia. This is what an alcoholic's brain looks like. This is what someone smokes weed looks like. So on and so forth. I didn't have a brain that looked like someone that had severe depression. I didn't look like I had a brain of someone that had bipolar. I looked like I had a malnourished brain with a vitamin D deficiency and physical brain damage from the serotonin overdose that they gave me when they prescribed me 100 milligrams of Zoloft twice a day. And so I took those results, and that's how we ended up winning that case. And the doctors there, I mean, they have PhDs in psychiatry, so they know all the pharmaceuticals well. And they weaned me off of all the mood stabilizers and antipsychotics, and over time I got better. And then they prescribed me vitamins to replace the malnutrition of the brain. And I slowly started getting better over time. But I mean, I still had to deal with what I went through, right? And
Yeah.
the therapy for what I went through isn't really something that a lot of people are specialized in, which is medical malpractice. And hey, dude, this is my son, by the way, Finley.
Hello.
He's now part of the
Welcome to
podcast.
the podcast. Yeah.
But
Yeah, my
yeah,
daughter was about to become part of it. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
getting
that's
through
really,
that, made it through it, started making art to really kind of erase and overcome the traumas that I had gone through, which of everything that I had been diagnosed with in my life,
yeah.
we get down to being diagnosed with severe acute PTSD because of the experience the VA put me through, not for anything else. So that's what I'm dealing with now, and it helps to have that exposure. One of the cool things about like the metaverse or NFTs is I have a Quest 3 headset, so I can get into virtual reality and I can walk around in spatial and look at these artworks. That it was a
Mm.
huge trigger for me the first time I tried it. Didn't know it was going to be because psychosis
Yeah, I can
reminded
imagine.
me of virtual reality. Like everything looked fake and cartoonish,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at art
His,
that's
yeah. There's a thing that people throw around a bit. I don't know if you've probably heard it mentioned a million times. Do you think that we're possibly living in a virtual reality?
I have heard that before. And I've thought that. And even if we are, one of the things that I think of to try and help with the anxiety of that idea, because it's a very anxious thought. I think
Yeah.
especially if you come towards like understanding or trying to believe it, which some of the side effects of what I went through gave me some depersonalization, derealization, and the anxiety that comes with that is very strong. So if we think we're in some kind of big simulation and none of this is real, it's real for me. And that's how I ground
Yeah.
myself, I ground myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
if it is a
That's good.
simulation, it's not
Yeah.
real. So be it. I'm still gonna make art, make music. I'm still gonna, cook
Yeah.
birria tacos from scratch, and I'm still gonna love my son and my wife no matter what happens.
Yeah.
If one day
Because I
Neo,
mean, how does that affect your life?
if one day
Yeah.
Neo shows up and he's like, he's trying to like figure out how to get out of the train station, I might try to help him, but
Yeah. And so to go from that, you've saved yourself, and now you want to save the world with art.
Right.
What does that exactly mean?
So, because I am financially able to pretty much do whatever I want now because of the case that I won, I'm not the kind of person to just sit back and stay silent and retire and die like most people would choose to do. I decided to make my 40-hour work week something that I'm good at, that I can try and contribute to as many people as I possibly could. So, I mean, within the last 3 years of starting Save the World with Art, which is something I trademarked, I opened up an LLC, Jams to Blues Creations LLC, and I started selling art and NFTs and donating 100% of the proceeds to people that need it more than me. And a lot of that goes into supporting other artists that I find that I really enjoy putting an effort out into the world, showing creation and creativity, and I believe that the world really can't necessarily be saved by just art, but that's a good start. There's a lot of awareness that needs to be spread about my experience that I had gone through, so that we get better. I mean, in my personal opinion, you go and get help somewhere. They should care about you as a person. They should care about your history. They should care about your feelings, and they should validate them. We've gotten to a state where, in most places in the world, we're just part of another algorithm, and we're not treating each other the same. Most people don't even know who their neighbors are anymore, and it's a weird thing to be born in a world where we're so disconnected, yet there is an evolutionary line of ancestors connected to our DNA that goes back millions of years. Each one of us, sure, our brains, yeah, they're very young. We come out of our mom, we don't know anything, and then we start learning language as we develop. But our bodies are not young. They're millions of years old. It's DNA, growing DNA, to build the blueprint to build these bodies that we are vessels of. And it's really interesting to me that this limited amount of time that we have here is so taken for granted and forgotten about, pushed off. And I just want to share that with people, through art, through music, through charity. Every time I make a piece, it has a part of my soul in it, I believe. And it's something that it may be a memory that I experienced. It may be a subconscious, like completely improvised thing, but there's always a way to connect with someone out there with it. And I hope that it helps whoever it is that sees it. I never really had that much help growing up and going through the things that I had to go through as a child without the love and the warmth that I needed at such a young age, to running away and joining the military and to get away from what I felt like was hell on earth. And then as I got older, I had a lot more empathy. And then I realized the people that were making those mistakes, the people that were failing at raising me, they didn't get that either. So we are a product of what the environment turns us into. And I believe that to simply help other people, you just need to be a positive force in the world. And a lot of the times, sometimes the only thing someone needs to not kill themselves or to not make that choice that they're going to regret for the rest of their lives is to make them smile and think about stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It goes a lot further than just donating to charities and planting trees, and it's just this. I don't know why I'm driven to do it. But I'm choosing to. It's like there's this voice inside of me that's like, you need to save the world with art. That's your job now.
Yeah.
And so I didn't say no. I said yes. I'm gonna do that. And I don't know if you're spiritual or not, or if you believe in anything, but I pray, and I prayed about it. And, I feel like I got an answer, because every time I do something in that direction, my life has gotten better. And so I try to keep it that way. And I'm not the kind of person to ever want to judge anyone else for what they think or what they believe in. I don't think that there's this big bad place that everyone goes to. I think that it took infinity for us to be born, and it's no accident. And it's going to be an infinity after we're here.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fork in the Road podcast, or watching the Fork in the Road podcast. For those people watching on Patreon, we also have it as a video on Spotify and YouTube. If you like the idea of chatting with artists, talking about how you go from starving to thriving, how you become a successful artist, whatever that means to you, whatever a thriving artist means. If you like this kind of thing, you can support the podcast in many ways. Apart from becoming a Patreon, you can just share it with your friends, or you could leave a review on iTunes. I think iTunes do review. Whoever does reviews, if you look in your podcast channel, if it allows you to do a review, or if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, please like, and I won't be one of those podcasts that go, you got to give a 5-star review. If there's something about the podcast you don't like, let me know. Write it in the comments and see if I can, tweak it a little bit to make it work better for everybody. But yeah, 5-star review would be pretty awesome. But anyway, check you next time.